In his career, Rusty Wallace was one of NASCAR's most elite drivers. But while he retired inside of NASCAR's top 10 in all-time wins, he only won one championship. But in 1988, Wallace looked to be in line for his first Winston Cup title. Now, Wallace ran well to open up the 1988 campaign, but it was not a clear championship-level performance. In the opening 9 races of 1988, Wallace brought home 3 top 5s, 6 top 10s, and only led 11 laps. In this time also, he had a DNF at Darlington, finishing 25th. So, at this time, Wallace was holding steady in the 5th position in the point standings. He was still within a race's worth of points behind points leader Dale Earnhardt with 112, but he still was behind the Intimidator. It seemed like Earnhardt would remain the front runner, ready to win his 3rd straight championship. It was clear that Wallace's performance needed to elevate, and starting at the 600-miler at Charlotte, that's what happened. Wallace would bring home a runner-up finish at Charlotte, and after leading 51 laps, he finished 3rd at Dover. Due to Earnhardt's struggles in these races, Wallace jumped up to 2nd in the points, only 16 points behind the Intimidator. And following the race at Riverside, Wallace took his performance up another notch.
Out of his way, however, turn number 9 can be very tricky. He has to be careful not to get in there too fast and slide high. That's his biggest problem right now. He's coming up on Bobby Hillin. As he goes into that turn, he moves around Hillin with no problem at all, and he slows it down going into that turn, gets her right down on the inside, as we've seen him so many times today. Looks like he's got it made, Bob.
Rusty Wallace comes out of corner number 9 in the Kodiak Pontiac. Slips just a little, but he's got the race won. He crosses the line, and Rusty Wallace wins.
While it was only 4 points, Wallace grabbed the lead. And the next 2 races would look and define both drivers' championship runs.
Down, it's about to be thrown, it's down, and we're in the last lap. Going into turn number 1 for Rusty Wallace. His heart is probably beating at a rate that couldn't be captured on any kind of EKG.
Boy, he's saying a prayer, please give me enough fuel just to go down this backstretch and accelerate off of turn 4.
Elliott closing in. Elliott moving up another car length. It has been a wonderful race. Only one small incident. That was when Dale Jarrett spun in turn number 3. We've only had 4 cautions. Had some mechanical failures. Here they come for 3 and 4. Driving for the finish. Down they come. Elliott trying to pull up. Rusty Wallace staying in front. Coming to the line. Rusty Wallace has defeated Bill Elliott.
After 14 races, Wallace led Earnhardt by 130 points in what would be the largest points lead anyone had all season. For Wallace, it looked to be his year. It looked to almost be in the bag. But this is where the season unraveled a bit. A pedestrian 12th at Daytona cut the lead down to 87, and a dismal 24th at Pocono cut it down to merely 3 points. And in these races, NASCAR's most popular driver, Bill Elliott, swept and would leapfrog Earnhardt for the 2nd position in points. The last 13 races for the championship would be settled between Wallace and Elliott. The two were locked in a virtual stalemate. Wallace ran incredibly well. He had a 5th at Talladega as well as 2 second-place finishes happening at Watkins Glen and Michigan. And the gap still was only 21 points. But the power was shifting into Elliott's favor. Even with finishes of 9th and 2nd, Wallace still lost the points lead to a red-hot Elliott. The power shift went into full effect at Richmond.
Big wreck in the front stretch.
Bodine.
Oh, no.
And I think Wallace.
Rusty Wallace. Man, what a heartbreak. Now, this is the kind of stuff.
Tire off, rolling down into turn 1.
Oh, man.
The gap blew up from 26 points over Wallace to 119. And even with a 3rd at Dover, Elliott's win would grow the gap even more now to a 3rd place Wallace, 139 back now. The season looked to be getting out of reach, but that is where Wallace began to stage a comeback. At Martinsville, Wallace won the pole. He led 39 laps and finished 3rd, but it only cut 15 points out of the lead, which was now 124. That's when Wallace went on an absolute tear.
And then he's going to probably honk Rusty Wallace as they come out of turn 2. Let's keep our eyes on this race to the finish as they head for the checkered flag hill. Well, he stood on it that time. You could see him move up visibly closer going into the first corner. But Rusty now driving with a rearview mirror. Notice him cut down, not allowing Darrell a lane to get around. This time Darrell's going high over in the third turn. Rusty goes high to block his path. Bill, take him to the finish.
He was very loose through turn 4. Fishtail in the car. He comes to the stripe, and Darrell Waltrip makes a move.
With fresh tires on right behind Bill Elliott. He's just looking for a place to go because those fresher tires is better for him, but he didn't have any running room.
Jeff Bodine right on the bumper of Rusty Wallace. You know, Jeff's got to be upset with himself for not racing Rusty to the line because Jeff really was the leader when the caution came out. White
flag this time by. Final lap. Can Jeff Bodine catch Rusty Wallace? And he nudges him in turns 1 and 2. Wallace a little bit out of shape. Bodine back on the inside. They are door to door. Down for the white flag. Final time. Here's Wallace back on the inside. And he nudges Jeff Bodine in turns 3 and 4. The crowd on their feet. It will be sideways. Rusty Wallace will win it here at North Wilkesboro Speedway. I mean, they are on their feet, ladies and gentlemen, for an outstanding.
Here at Rockingham, the car comes out of corner number 2 down the backstretch. Staying behind the third place car, number 11 of Terry Labonte. Into third and fourth corners for the final time. Rusty keeps the car low on the racetrack. Off of corner number 4. Here comes the checkered flag, and Rusty Wallace has won here at Rockingham.
With 2 races remaining in the 1988 campaign, Wallace was only 79 back. If Elliott slipped up, Wallace would be able to come in and grab the points lead. He would finish 5th at Phoenix the next week after leading 68 laps, but unfortunately for Rusty, Elliott finished a spot higher, and while he didn't lead any laps, it would keep the points gap at 79 heading into Atlanta. Wallace qualified on the pole, though, while Elliott rolled off the grid in 29th. So off the bat, Rusty had the advantage. Wallace would lead the opening 4 laps before being overtaken, while Elliott slowly made his way closer to the front. And the early stages of the race were led by guys like Dale Earnhardt, Davey Allison, and Darrell Waltrip, but Wallace took control in the second half. Elliott also kept just close enough to the front to keep his points lead, and unfortunately for Wallace, the laps would just continue to wind down.
88. Bill right now is in 11th position. And remember, he needed to finish 18th or better to win the race, or rather win the Cup, regardless of what Rusty Wallace did. And it is going to come down to that situation. Rusty Wallace from Fenton, Missouri is about to win the Atlanta Journal 500. Here he comes off of corner number 4, and Rusty Wallace wins race number 6 of 1988, the final one of the year. It's a celebration in the Pontiac crew. They're celebrating the battle victory, but here is the war victory that's won by Bill Elliott, and listen to the partisan crowd here at Atlanta. We're just down the road from Dawsonville, Georgia, Bill's hometown, and he had a tremendous turnout of people here this afternoon to cheer him on to the Winston Cup, and they did so successfully.
Even with a maximum points effort, Wallace still missed out on winning the championship by a mere 24 points. But the next year, Wallace would be able to break through and win the 89 title in a nail-biting finish over Dale Earnhardt. But in 1988, Wallace set career highs for top 5s, top 10s, and his average finish, only to come up just short. And it makes many wonder, what if Wallace hadn't blown an engine at Darlington? What if he hadn't crashed at Richmond late in the year? What if, in 1988, Rusty Wallace captured his missing ring?